Shane is the host now. All right, so Ted, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Even if we can't see you, we know you're there. We can hear you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm honored that you invited me to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you, and we're also so happy to have New York Craft Malt sponsoring the event. That was great of you guys, and I know that you know, we helped you. We did for our event local in 2018. I know that we donated some money to Cornell Small Grains program, and you know, I feel like we've had a pretty good relationship with you guys over the last couple of years. Can you start out by just explaining what New York Craft Malt is and what you do in your capacity there?
Well, first of all, I love the Broomies. You guys are fantastic down there in the city. You guys are the catalyst, I think, of everything that's going on down there with home brew and beer. But New York Craft Malt. I started New York Craft Malt in 2012, a little before the actual New York State Farm Brewing license came in effect. But we're in Batavia, New York. We're about 6 hours west of you guys, so we're way up in Western New York.
I grew up in Buffalo, so I know Batavia well.
Ah, fantastic! Yeah, we're about 30-35 minutes from Buffalo.
Right.
A lot of great agriculture in Western New York. We've got a lot of great grains, a lot of good growers, and it's great to find local people that can grow quality grains that I can malt.
So, what is the malting scene like in New York State? I know that I don't want to say it's a new thing, because I'm sure that they've been malting grain in New York for centuries, but it's probably kind of like the hop industry, something that fell by the wayside a bit and is sort of coming back now. How many maltsters are there in New York State right now?
Well, the resurgence pretty much started when the farm brewing license came in. There were really no malt houses at that time. I was the first in, and then it just started multiplying, and I think right now we have around 13.
Were you guys the first?
First to register, yes. Yep, Farmhouse Malt, I think, put the product out right before I did, but I was designing my equipment and having it manufactured, and it took me a year or so to get that equipment made. There really wasn't at the time any equipment off the shelf for craft malting. There was just, it was all in industrial scale equipment.
Ted, how did you get into malting in the first place?
Well, I attended in 2011 a NOFA conference, North American Organic Farming Association, and I went to a segment called From Farm to Bakery. So I was going to grow some grains myself and mill them and go sell right to the bakers. The facilitator at the time, Glenda Neff, she mentioned just briefly, might have been one sentence, saying if there's any entrepreneurs out there, there's a need for malting grains for the brewing industry. So then at that point, I opened up a dialogue with Glenda, started my research, and she started me off. She planted the seed, and here I am today.
What was your what did you do before that? Because you said that you started, so that would be 2011. Did you have a career path before you got into malting?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I've had a few. You know, I'm actually a trained diesel mechanic. I rebuild diesel engines and over-the-road tractor trailers and things like that. And I had my own business, and then I sold that, and I got into mini storage for a while, and data management. I got into shredding documents, and then I wanted to get my roots back on the farm. I am actually on a farm that was purchased by my great-grandfather in 1909. So we have big roots right here on this farm, and I wanted to get back to it, start growing more grains and things like that, and that's what brought me back to the farm in 2011, a little bit before that, and then we're kind of reinventing the farm into a modern day malt house.
So are you guys growing the grain that you're malting, or some of it, or all of it?
Well, the original plan was to grow it and malt it, but I found that the level of concentration malting needed and the level of quality of the grain needed, I find it that I contract all my grains out right now. I get them analyzed. I can always refuse them at the door if they're not to my specifications I need for malting quality. So it eliminates me trying to grow it and trying to grow quality and then try to find a secondary market if I fail at it, or I'm forced to use my own grains because I've grown them. You can't make good malt out of bad quality grains. So I contract it all out now. So I have a lot of great growers all over New York State, from down in the Hudson Valley region, Finger Lakes, Niagara, and Western New York. I go anywhere I can find quality grains.
Would you say that because this is sort of a relatively new thing in New York, that you're seeing a bit of a learning curve? Like, is the grain quality that you're getting now in 2020, how does it compare to the grain you were getting in 2012?
Excellent question. The grains, at first, I believe I was the first one to grow an actual malting barley variety. We grew it like we did wheat. We put too much nitrogen on it as we grew it like wheat, and this is how much nitrogen, 100 pounds per acre. And it just spiked the protein. It didn't do well that first year. And after that, Cornell has gotten involved, Cornell Cooperative Extension, and the growing practices and the growers that are paying attention are really doing a fine job now. But it took good 3 years to grow a good quality, malt quality grain here in New York. We just didn't know what we were really doing. We've come a long ways in a short period of time, and we have some really, really nice grains now being grown in New York for malt purposes.
You mentioned Cornell, and I know on your website it talks a little bit about, and I don't know if the acronym is pronounced CALS or if it's CALS, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Cornell CALS, they're affiliate, they're the I guess the school for educating the farmers, growing practices, soil qualities. They have their grain pilot programs that they're breeding grains, which I'd like to talk about. But Cornell CALS are the New York State head runners of where you need to go to get educated on most any grains grown in New York State, in our region, in the Northeast. But Cornell has been working on a barley variety to grow in our region, designed for our region, and I think it's very exciting. I think it's going to be the new direction we go, because we have problems in our region. We have a lot of moisture. We have a lot of funguses. We have a lot of problems with our region for small grains like barley. Other grains do well. Corn does well, but we get a lot of funguses that turn away a lot, that make a lot of our barley not acceptable at my door. So their breeding program has come to a point where they now have an 8-acre plot in. They're propagating this variety, and this year they'll have 8 acres full, so there's going to be enough to try to malt, test brew, and we were talking with Mark Sorrells when he came down in 2018 to discuss maybe getting the brewminaries to help with some beer trials with this test grain. So very exciting news coming from them. They've been working on it. They actually get 2 seasons out of 1 because they send a sample to New Zealand to get another season there, and then it's sent back to us and we get a season here. So they've really put a rush on this. This usually takes 10 to 12 years. So it's only really been 5 years. Actually 4 years, I believe.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So would you say, so like with we don't hear the term used as much in beer, but we do with wine, the idea of terroir, of an ingredient being from a place. Would you say that New York State grain has a sort of terroir? Like if I were to make a beer from New York State two-row, how would that compare to two-row grown in the plains or on the West Coast?
Well, that's a great question. Terroir has always been a question of the grains, what we grow here versus out west or around the world. You know, Maris Otter is more of a variety grain that we can't get here in the States and grow. So we can't get that variety of barley. That is an ongoing question. There is, you know, that is there actual terroir? I've heard both sides of that. It's hard to describe because there's from the field to how the maltster manipulates that grain and grows it and what he's making or she's making. If you're just doing a smash beer, that's where you would need to really figure out if there's going to be some quality taste differences. And I haven't been involved with any of those flavor analysis. So I don't have a definitive answer. I would like to say yes, New York has a great quality. We do have great quality malts. They're tasting really nicely. I'm not giving you the answer, I guess, today.
No, that's okay. No, that's a great answer. As a follow-up question to that, then, I guess, because you talked about the grower and the malter, who do you think has a bigger influence? Maybe you don't have an answer for this, but who do you think has a bigger influence on how the grain ultimately ends up tasting in beer? Is it the grain itself, or is it the way that the grain is malted?
Well, there's a lot of factors. First, it starts with the variety of barley, and I've probably malted a good almost 10 different varieties, and I love one variety. Then the seed isn't available for the next year, and then the seed companies keep rotating these other seeds that I haven't even tried yet. So it's been a challenge over the years of getting the right seed and the steady seed source. That's a whole nother subject, but it's the growing season. It's like going to the farmer's market. You go to the farmer's market, your vegetables are a little different every year. They're a little bit bigger some years, a little smaller, tastes a little different. That's the same thing with barley. Every year it's a little different. And so you've got Mother Nature, you have the soils, you have the growing practices of the farmer. So there's a lot of things that can affect that flavor. And at the end of the day, the maltster has the ultimate factor for the flavor by making from Pilsners to Pales to Viennas to Munichs, and just it can go on and on. But to get that raw flavor from the land, you would have to make a really nice Pilsner, very light hopped beer, and try. I don't think there's been a test to do that. Maybe that should be something you guys should do. You did 2018 do a lot of different beers, but to get the different varieties and maybe different malt houses and see if there is a difference there. But
how many varieties does New York Craft Malt produce?
Varieties of barley, we right now we're doing really two varieties, but we're making many different kind of malts out of them. we're making, like, we have our pale, we have our Pilsner, we have a Vienna, we have a sugar pills we call, which is a Cara pills. We have soft white wheat, hard red wheat. We have rye, oats. Oat malt is a really nice product, and we even make some buckwheat and some other off the charts. We have no rules here, so we're making many, and then we're taking those, and we do have a nice size roast house, so we're roasting them. I think we have the largest roaster in the Northeast. It's a beautiful machine. I did start in a little grill that I made with a little rotisserie. It got me in the game, but now I can do 400-pound batches continuously. So, but I can make beautiful biscuits out of all the grains. I have biscuit wheat, biscuit rye, biscuit oats, which you know, you really can't get anywhere else. The biscuit oats are just fantastic. If you just roasting that, it's like you're in your mom's kitchen. She's making cookies. You know, it's a beautiful flavor, smell in the malt house. But
we actually have a question in the chat that corresponds to what you just said. What's your favorite specialty malt, and what smells the best in the malt house?
Crystals. The crystals that I make are awesome. I'm able to totally, the challenge of any maltster that's roasting is actually getting glassy notes. You have to liquefy the endosperm. You have to have the right atmosphere to liquefy the center of the barley, or I make crystals out of all the grains. That's hard to do. So the crystals are very, very great flavor. You're putting that malt, you're putting green malt directly into the roaster. You're stewing it in there. Then you're roasting it at different levels. At the end of the day, I love milling any of my crystals. It's just a fantastic flavor, smell. I would put it in every beer. It's just so good. It's just great. But the biscuits, when you're milling it, you're really getting the flavor coming out. But your biscuits, if you're outside where the vent is, it smells like I'm a full bakery. I do, because of my chocolates, which are very dark, kind of a funny thing, but not, is if I'm making a chocolate, I usually have to call the fire department and tell them that if anybody calls in, I'm not burning down. It puts out a lot of big smoke out the stack. What I'm doing is it creates a lot of smoke, and then I water drench it, and I back it off. I water drench it. There's a whole system in there, so there's a lot of steam coming off it, and there's a fine line of burning it up versus having the finest quality chocolate you've ever had. But I live next to the thruway here, so I think I've had the fire department. I think people think I'm burning down when they're driving by the thruway. So.
We have another question from Alex in the chat. What are the challenges of starting your own roasting and flaking programs?
Biggest challenge was there really aren't any recipes. You can go online anywhere you want, and if there's a recipe, it might be for a 5-pound batch, somebody doing a home brew. But at the commercial level, there are no recipes. There's many techniques for roasting. It's all trial and error. My system is really nice. It has flavor profiling software. So once I have a recipe, I've got it and I save it, and then I can repeat it, which is key with all these malts. But the biggest challenge was figuring it out and making mistakes. And I did have a 20-pound roaster, and now I've got a 400-pound roaster. So it's night and day on those products. But when to drench it with water, when to drench it with steam, when not to. And it's right at the end. You always have to be there right at the end because you're pulling samples out. You're grinding it up in a coffee mill. You're comparing it side by side with something that's already been tested in color. And you have to be proactive. You have to end it before it gets to that color because it keeps going. it'll keep gaining color while it has temperature. So you have to kick it out into the cooling tray and start it cooling down before you hit your color that you're looking for. But the recipes, I can manipulate flavor as well. I can have up to 17 segments per roast, believe it or not. Every step you get to you get to the your end product manipulates the flavor. So how much time at what temperature, you're baking a cake kind of thing, but it really brings out flavor. The roaster and the Munichs and the specialties. The pails and pilsners are fun to make, but that's bulk stuff. My always thing has been on the specialty side, being the color and the flavor of New York.
Question from Alex Calif in the chat. How similar is it to roasting coffee?
Well, very similar. It's a different roaster. Most of your coffee roasters are all direct heat. There's products you don't want direct heat. You don't want those fumes going through. So a coffee roaster will do the same, but you're not going to be able to do direct heat, indirect heat, water drench, steam drench. Recirculate the heat. I can bring that around too. But if you're making coffee, a black bean, versus a chocolate or a wicked dark series that we have, it's similar, but not. If I answered that correctly.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
What's the difference between flaked and malted grain?
Malted grain takes a week. Malted grain, you're sprouting it, you're steeping it, you're germinating it, you're kiln drying it. That all takes a good 7 days or more. You're growing it. The enzymes in the grain start breaking down the large protein walls in the grain and exposing the starches that later become sugars. I'm actually getting into a full steam flaking operation. So flaking grains, what I'll be doing is steam conditioning, cooking them. We're going to be steaming it, cooking it, and then dropping it down into a flaker mill, and that'll squish it like oatmeal. So what you're doing is actually making, instead of oatmeal you have to cook for a while, to instant oatmeal. All your extracts are available now. So you don't have to boil the by jeepers out of it to get what you're looking for. The flakes, the extract's already exposed, it's already partially cooked, and it's instant oatmeal, if you will, or instant oats, flakes, instant corn flakes, instant rye, oats, rye, or wheat and barley.
So is the flaked grain malted or not?
It is not. It's normally whole grains. They have to be analyzed correctly, but it's a much simpler process. So you're malting it, you're creating sugars, you're turning it into something else. You're modifying it into malt. Now you're not going to get all those flavors, all the sweetness out of flaked grains. You're going to get your nice protein haze. You're going to get nice mouthfeel. You're going to get a lot of beautiful flavors out of it, but you still need malt for the sugar content. For the majority of it, you'll get some sugars out of the corn, but not as much as you'll need for base malts. If that makes sense.
Alex says in some New York State grains, at times he gets a peanut butter flavor, and I agree with this, especially with the New York State Pilsner malt. He wants to know, is that due to the grain varietal, the malting process, or some other factor?
Good question. We've been discussing that for a while, not only with Alex, other breweries, but with that peanut butter flavor. It does disappear, I believe, after a while, but it is up front. On the brew. On the Pilsner malts, of course, you don't want a color in it, so you're kilning at a very low temperature, a lot of air, low temperature. So usually you want to finish around 83 degrees centigrade, and that gets rid of a lot of off grassy flavors. But if you go any more farther than that, you're going to start creating color. So I believe it's in the final curing stage. We're curing at a lot lower levels, perhaps, and you're getting those flavors. Usually those will boil out, I believe, and you boil another 30 minutes perhaps, and all that dissipates. It's not really DMS at all, but it's a flavor. But I've been told that it does go away, and you don't have peanut butter beer every time.
Yeah, and it's not like, and that's not to say that it's a fault either. I mean, it's a nutty quality that is unique to the grain, but not, you know, like you said, it's not DMS. It's not a flaw. It's just a unique characteristic of the grain.
That could be that terroir we're kind of looking at. I don't think it ends up in the end beer. Does it or doesn't it? Have you?
I get it. So, you know, Strong Rope now being 100% New York State grains, for me, it's very easy to pick out the beers that they used Pilsner malt as their base grain, even if it's an IPA, because for me, it's always there lurking in the background. There's always this certain nutty quality to it that, I mean, especially in the Pilsner and in the cream ale, but even in some of the more hoppy styles, it's still there. And again, like it's interesting, it's pleasant. It's not what I would call a flaw. It's just very unique. It's very different from German Pilsner malt or even Pilsner malt, you know, grown and malted somewhere else in the United States.
Yeah, I do believe we're almost to a point where you can call that terroir. I would like to figure out if other malt houses are if they're malting the same variety for the same Pilsner, if you will, if they have that same nutty flavor. If it is, we have our terroir case closed right here.
There you go. So we're pretty much at the end of the time now. The last question I want to ask you is if somebody, I mentioned Strong Rope, who is now, I think, one of the only brewers in New York City that's doing 100% New York State beers. But if somebody wanted to try a beer that was made from New York Craft Malt, can you name a couple breweries that use your grain besides Strong Rope?
I should have had a list here. I'm selling to over 50 breweries right now all over New York. We have Big Alice. Their gold winner beer there was made with all my malt. Their Governor Cup beer. Diner Brew down there, Strong Rope. You've got Wild East, Jeff Lyons as well. I'm going to make people mad now. I
don't expect you to list off all 50 breweries.
But up my way, you know, up for the Thousand Islands, there's several Woodboat up there. We've got Finger Lakes Brewery. There's I'm going to make people mad because I'm not mentioning.
Jerry says Otto uses it at Grimm, and
yes.
Dr. Peterman says Fifth Hammer's Bitter uses it.
Yep. There you go. Yep. So everybody has jumped on once in a while. So at one time or another, I've been working with all the breweries down in New York City, and on a regular basis, you know, Strong Rope by far is the test lab for New York ingredients. Jason and Alex, that's what they want to do, and they believe in it, and I commend them for being so directed, needing to use local in all their beers.
Awesome. Well, Ted, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I'm sorry we couldn't get the video going, but I'm glad we had you at least for a chat. Also, thank you for your support of the event and of the Bruminaries in general. Claudine just put the website newyorkcraftmalt.com in the chat. Would that be the best place to go to learn more about your operation?
Absolutely. We're on Instagram and Facebook and the other social medias as well. And it's my fault. It's got to be my computer with the video. I apologize. It has nothing to do
No,
with it. So,
no worries.
I don't do it often enough to have this tested. So I apologize.
That's okay. We forgive you, Ted, for all that you do for New York State and for the beer community. You are set. You're good.
Yeah, it's been fun. You guys are a riot. I love coming down there and sponsoring your events, and your whole crew. Everybody's awesome down there, and I just wish we were a little closer. I'd be visiting more often. So, but and everybody's.
Can if somebody were to come up, would they be able to visit?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. Just let me know you're coming, and my doors are open for sure.
Well, there you go, guys. So follow them on Instagram and check out the website. And if you're up that way, check them out. Ted, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Claudine.
All right. Take care, Ted.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Awesome.